One of the most fulfilling experiences for me has been taking care of my mother when she was very sick. To care, to use all my qualities for another person. That's a quality that is characteristically feminine. And we need to use that. That's part of who God made us to be. Why would anybody not want to do that? Right? Just to fulfill a dream of a career. For me, that is not going to make you happy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. Today, my guest was Ester Munt-Brooks. She is a public speaker. She speaks in parishes, schools, colleges, Catholic organizations. And we had a nice talk today talking about marriage, talking about being a mother, talking about prayer, the benefits of prayer, the necessity of prayer, the necessity of faith, how to find peace, lots of things. We talked about lots of things. It was real nice to speak with Esther, and I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, Esther.
Hello, Tammy.
It's good to see you again.
Great to see you. We saw each other
briefly, right?
Briefly, yeah. A brief lunch with a lot of other people.
And where were we? Do you remember? I don't remember.
We were at the Good News Conference in Minnesota.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, dear.
Yeah. I know. You just don't even remember, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. That was a good event, though. It was very positive, but very positive event.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
I'd like
event.
to go there again. That was lovely.
Yeah. But you have probably been traveling all over, right? Since then?
A little more than I might have, but not as fast as we often are, because we're often on tour, and we're not on tour right now. So
okay.
So it's a little bit less hectic. It's a little less
good.
hectic. So I wonder. I know that I met you at it was a Catholic Good News conference, and so maybe you could tell me what kind of things have influenced you, your present work, what you're doing now, and changed your perspective in any way just in the recent past? Have you been branching out into any new endeavors?
In the recent past, the biggest endeavor has been a move from Massachusetts to Northern Virginia, and and it's been good because now I'm closer to my kids who have their own kids, so I'm closer to the family, and I love it. In other ways, it has been a little challenging, being a new place, new house, everything breaking down, and trying to start my talks in a new place, and trying to continue studying, and but nothing major in my life has changed. I continue my same routines, and nothing big has happened.
Well, you're doing
lately.
a master's degree, right? You're doing a master's?
Yeah.
Can you
I'm
tell
doing
us a little bit? Yeah, what are you studying?
In theology.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it. I'm almost done. I have a couple of classes done left, and it's I'm doing it so that I can be better at my ministry of talking to people about our Catholic faith, and how what I really like to do is to all these things that I learn in my studies, I try to explain to people that don't have the time to study in depth our faith. And I do that by using scripture and doctrinal terms and concepts, and then trying to think ways in which we can live those beliefs in our ordinary lives. And so I usually do retreats, I do conferences, I do Catholic conferences, Catholic retreats, speak in parishes, etc.
And do
So
you
yeah,
do you focus on men or women or children, or do you have a focus?
I started doing only women. I started doing this for in Spanish for the Hispanic community in Washington D.C. But then, little by little, I included men, and then I ended up doing things. They called me to do things, to do talks in English. So I'm doing English, Spanish, and anybody that wants to come is welcome to come. Old, young, anybody. Probably
Oh, that's
younger
good.
people would not be very interested. Like children will not be very interested in what I say. But
Right.
yeah, anybody is included.
And you grow up in Spain? Is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Barcelona, Spain.
Barcelona.
Yep. And when I was 20, early 20s, 24 years old, I met my husband, who is American, and we got married in Spain. And a few years after we got married, we moved to the States. And that was in 92. So I've been here for 32 years. I I became American. I'm American by choice, and I've been here. My children are American, and I've lived here since then.
And do you go back to Spain?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I
Do you have
do
family
often.
there? You have
Yeah,
family there? Oh, that's
my
nice.
siblings are there. Unfortunately, my mom and my dad passed away in the past years, and but my siblings are still there. Yeah,
Yeah.
we go often. We try to do that. Yeah.
I have my mom and dad are also, they've passed, but my siblings are all actually in the same place. They all live in the same town on Vancouver Island. That isn't where I grew up. That isn't where any of them lived during the time that they were raising their children, but they've all retired to the same community, which is
Wow.
very, very nice for me because I just travel to this. I take one flight and I arrive there and I see my brother and my two sisters.
Right.
So that's pretty
Same
nice.
thing. Same
Yeah,
thing for
yeah.
me. I don't
Oh,
have to go.
nice.
I just go there. Everybody's there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a
So
beautiful place. Is it a beautiful place where you came from?
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have the sea. We have a nice city too. It's good. It's
Yeah.
I would not want to go back there to live. I'm more culturally American than Spaniard at this point, so it would be hard for me to leave to go back there. But it's good to go and visit and enjoy food and beach and all these nice things
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very nice. So when you're giving your talks, I imagine that you're seeing problems in our society
yeah.
because there are definitely problems. And so what do you see on your when you gather people together and you start to speak to them? What kind of questions do they have, and how are they searching?
It's always surprising the reaction that I get when I prepare my talks and I'm ready to talk. I think about what people will want to, what people, what would help people to understand certain things. So I'm very schematic and about how I'm going to present something. I think I'm a deep down, I'm a teacher. I like to teach things. So but then I'm very surprised because a lot of the times the responses are mostly about their lives, and they come asking advice or asking. So whatever theme, like for example, I gave a talk in Minnesota. My talk was about forgiveness, and it was like, okay, these are the points why the conference was on mercy. So forgiveness is a way, it's a way of mercy. And so I finished the talk, and I gave points on how to forgive and what to do, blah, blah, blah. The end of the talk, most of the people that wanted to talk to me was about specific cases. Okay, I have a brother that I haven't spoke to in such a long time. What do I do? How do I do that? And so very personal, more than just about the teachings of the church. Is about what do I do about these? And the kind of problems are all kinds. This like forgiveness is a big one. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have a hard time forgiving things. What I do in my talks is I explain, for example, in this talk, I talk about how I had a hard time forgiving somebody. And so I explain the steps and what happened and why and the feelings and the desires and the decisions and where the faith came in and all these things. So people say, okay, so I have a problem. How can I do the same things? I thought, oh, well, I hope my talk was pretty clear on how to do that. I'm just kidding. But usually I hear people talking about their particular problems and how they can get better at solving those problems.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think I
yeah,
think with problems, people, my experience is sometimes you're not ready to forgive, and so it doesn't matter what you're told if you're not ready to forgive,
right.
if you're not willing to forgive,
Yeah,
and so then willingness is what you have to
yeah,
talk about rather than
yeah.
forgiveness right away. Yeah?
And that's why sometimes part of that talk is that sometimes we cannot forgive on our own and we need to ask for grace and we need to pray. And that's precisely what happened to me. I was not ready. I didn't want to. I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was for me, not for the other person that I needed to forgive. But it didn't happen until I allowed God, God's grace and mercy to come. I allowed God's mercy to come in my heart and let it work in me. And that's the end of the talk. Like I finally was able to forgive this person,
How
which was
long
my
did
brother.
that take? How long did it take?
That process of I don't know, probably God had been working for a long time on
Right.
that. I was aware of it for months before I saw a change. Not so much on that person asking for forgiveness, but of me just not needing that person to ask for forgiveness. Because that's another thing that people say, oh, but they don't ask for forgiveness. I'm not, well, that's not a reason not to forgive somebody. So you need to do it, even if you're not asked to forgive. So I think the moment I was aware of that, it was just a few months before that relationship began to change. Yeah,
Yeah. When you realized that it wasn't your brother had who had to have anything to do with what you do. It was up to you to forgive him,
yeah,
regardless of how he felt about it. Yeah.
that's correct. And I think if we did that all the time, we would save so much time and
Yeah.
grievances and miserable time thinking about things. But it's hard for us human beings. We are too attached to our feelings, and so yeah. But forgiveness is beautiful because once you allow that work of grace, it just there's so many changes. There's so many um, like so much love that
So
you
much
didn't even
love.
know
Yeah.
that you could receive and give. So yeah, it's always the grace of God that we need to do the hard things.
Yes, that's how it appears. And I imagine husbands and wives, a lot can come to between husbands and wives because you're together all the time and there's going to be misunderstandings. So I wonder
Yep.
if any of your talks help people through marital troubles.
My husband and I have done marriage prep, and we love it because it helps our marriage a lot too when we
Okay, will you
think
explain
about
that?
things.
Will you explain that?
Yeah. Which part? The helping
Marriage
of,
prep.
yeah.
Marriage prep.
Marriage prep. So marriage prep is just couples that are about to get married, and then the Catholic Church and depending on the archdiocese, but most archdioceses require that the couples have to take a class on called pre-cana, pre-marriage, and some places, for example, in the state of Maryland, which is the archdiocese of Washington D.C., it's they have to take a weekend retreat, and so and we did that thing that weekend. There were different speakers, and there are priests, and there are couples, and so my husband and I did some of those talks in that retreat for these couples that were about to get married, and it was really fun. It was very good because it brings you together, and it's kind of, it's good to share um, things that we have lived through so that they don't have to go through the same things. They probably will go through the same things, but at least with a little bit more of knowledge. And we love doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
for the both of you to go. Yeah, that's
yeah,
nice.
it's a very good thing to do. We love it. Yeah, very nice.
When I got married, I was in the Protestant church. They gave us, I remember they gave us a personality test to see if we were suited to one another. That was one of the things they did. It wasn't very, it wasn't like, it wasn't like they do in the Catholic Church, of course, because there is no,
You mean the temperaments?
yeah, there's nothing like that, that I
Okay,
remember. And I was very young
okay,
when I left the Protestant church, but I
okay.
found when I joined the Catholic Church, it was very good at asking you about your doubts and your reservations, so that you could overcome those things and become closer to
That's
Christ.
correct. Yeah,
And I appreciated the questions, and I thought that they were thoughtful. There's a
right.
lot of thoughtfulness in the church.
Yeah. One of
Or
the
in,
things that, yeah, like, so my husband and I got married in the Justice of the Peace when we were very young. Neither of us practiced our faith. We were like very um, secular, and we got married in the Justice of the Peace. And then 18 years later, we got married in the church. And so there was something there that was very interesting for understanding that the sacrament of marriage is more than just a legal document. Um, it's a source of grace. It's a source of grace for both spouses. It's and I noticed that in my marriage changed after we got married in the church.
in what
We
way did it
we
change?
both noticed. We changed because I always explain that we, for me, since the moment I met my husband and we got married, my husband was the most important thing in the world, to the point that it was kind of like a god. We would call it like a false idol. And I depended on him for everything, for my moods, for my happiness, for my everything. And if he didn't give me what I needed, I was not well. So I was too needy. I was too dependent on that for me to be happy, fulfilled, and etc. After we got married, I realized, and I made a decision that my husband was not going to be my God. That first I was going to put God, and second was I was going my husband's going to be the second priority in my life. And that was kind of sad. It was kind of like a death. I had lost that fake God. But at the same time, the fact that I put God first, which means a lot of things to put God first. We can talk about that too. But that the fact that I changed that priority allowed me to love my husband better because I didn't need him to make me happy. I could I could love him in spite of him not being perfect, like any human being is not perfect. I didn't need him to be perfect for me to love him because God, who is perfect, was giving me that strength, was giving me the grace to do that. And so I was in a way independent from that needy part, but at the same time I was able to love deeper and better and in a more transcendental way. And that improved our marriage totally. But I have to say, it was sad at the beginning. It was like, you're not it. It was a realization, but an important realization. Um, um, Father, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. He wrote a book, Three to Get Married, Fulton
Three?
Sheen.
Oh,
Three
yeah.
to Get Married, Fulton Sheen. And that book is a great book for couples and talks about this better than I can say. I can explain it. And so, but I experienced it and it's true still. So it was a big change in our marriage.
I don't know if I've done that. I probably have. I probably have done that in the past. But in the most recent past, we've made a decision to try to love one another in a in as generous a manner as we can, always. Not just on special nights or special days or holidays or whatever it is,
Right.
but every
Yeah.
day and at every time of day.
Yeah.
And that has helped quite a bit to have the intention of love.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because yeah, love is to will the good of the other person.
right.
And that doesn't mean warm feelings and a lot of times it's really not that warm. A lot of times is I can't stand this person, but I decided to love you. And that is a deeper love. It's a sacrificial love. And so I think that's why getting older, sorry, not so old, getting older is it helps the relationship if you do it right, if you have the right priorities. Because if you don't have the right priorities, it gets harder and harder. But if you have the right priorities, it becomes so deep and so rich and sacrificial and it's like a source of peace and joy that
Yeah.
otherwise just based on happy feelings it's not. It's always very superficial and it changes all the time and it's not as stable and deep.
Yeah, because each of us are doing the things that we need to do,
Right.
and that sometimes keeps us apart. But and also we can come together with the intention of being loving, but not expect anything from the other person.
Right.
With faith, it's more of a faith in the relationship that there will be a coming together and a celebration together, just to have faith that that will come. And
Right.
when it does, then it's much deeper and much more fulfilling, right? That
Right.
yeah. And
And
those things do
yeah.
come. I think for me anyway, it's taken a long time for us to get to that point.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's work. It does. It's
Right.
not like yeah, but also probably I don't know if you have experienced that. A lot of times, my husband travels a lot, and so we haven't seen each other for a while, and then we see each other, and the day that we see each other, the expectations are so high and we are both very intense and very passionate about things, and it ends up badly. We end up like ugh, it's like disappoint where I am disappointed. He didn't say that, he didn't look at that, he didn't tell me
Right.
that. And it's like, it's just, and it would happen all the time. We would just crash on the first day. And so we realized this is not, this shouldn't be like that. We see each other very little. We should use the time better. And so, like you said, no expectations. Just just give generously, not to expect,
Right.
and just give in those moments that are least expected, because the other person, when I see that my husband is doing an effort on something that normally he wouldn't do, he does something and I realize of that, he's loving me sacrificially, he's like putting up with something that otherwise he wouldn't, that opens my heart. I go,
Mm.
whoa, that makes me love more. So it's kind of like a chain reaction. The problem is when we both expect something and we're not really giving anything.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So we're not. Our attention isn't on the other; it's on ourselves.
it's in
If our
ourselves.
attention's on the others, we can see when something is done
Right,
that we may not even noticed if we were spending too much time expecting and
right,
having our thoughts on ourselves. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah,
And we
that
will
makes
not get
a world of
disappointed if
difference.
we don't expect anything.
Right.
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 Yeah.
And there's a magic for you because and that's a practice, right? It's a practice. It doesn't happen automatically. It's something
No.
that you have to practice, and it might not work at the beginning because
Right.
you're not very good at it. Just like anything else, you have to practice, and over
Yeah.
time, that's when you start to see the fruit of what you've done.
That's
And so
right.
that's why it's called the practice of prayer, I think, isn't it? Because it's over time that you
That's right.
see the benefits.
That's correct. And that you grow in love, in holiness,
Yeah.
in in service, in offering yourself to the other person. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And when you do that, then you can do that with other people too, not just with your spouse. You
Yes.
can do that with your
No, you just
children.
you practice with your spouse.
Right. But like, I don't know if that's your case. To me, it's a lot easier to give myself up without asking anything with my kids. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I give everything. They don't give me anything in return. I don't care. I don't, well, sometimes if it goes on and on, I say, okay, you say thank you or something, but I don't care very much. But when it's my husband, the one that doesn't respond to something I'm giving, that's different. That's a lot harder to swallow.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
it is a bit of a well, that's why I guess it's a sacrament, is because it is very challenging, but the rewards are so rich
Yeah.
that if you can take it seriously, there is no end to the joy that you can have,
That
right?
is correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need that grace in the sacrament. We receive that grace. Yeah. Yeah.
So as a mother and a grandmother, how have these roles shaped your thoughts on living in faith in everyday life?
It has taught me that there was a place in my heart that was saved for grandchildren. It's a different way to love, even more generous than to your own kids. I totally don't expect anything in return. It's it's a joyful love, more than your own kids. It's a beautiful thing. It's kind of like the dessert of life. You get that thing, that relationship. It has so much joy. I think for both the grandpa and grandma, it's just pure joy. And of course, we don't have to do any of the ugly work, of the dirty work of. We only do the enjoyment, the playing, the connecting, the relationship, the the fun stuff. Not only fun, the joyful and full of love. That's it. It's just really something that I didn't know I could love in this way. It's different than any other relationship that I had. It's the grandkids. You love
And
them so much.
they are amazing too. And I remember that with my own grandparents, how much I loved them and how much I liked to be with them. My grandma and grandpa, my dad's parents. I even took a little doll suitcase and hid in the back seat and tried to run away with them. You know, I was hiding in their car, thinking that I could just go live with them. My grandparents, I
Oh,
loved them so much, and it's really something to receive the love from a grandchild. It's really over the top, isn't it?
it is. It is. It is very, very, very over the top. It's a great thing. Very thankful
And
for that.
and you can also have. I know my sister had no grandchildren. She had three children, and she had no grandchildren. And then she had three grandchildren. They had three babies within a month of each other. And
Wow.
then she had three, so you can have none and then you can have three. It's
I
wild.
know. That's wild. Yeah. Yeah, because that's the other thing. You think, oh, I have one when I had my first. I love him so much. What's going to happen with my other ones? Well, my second one was born and it's like, oh my gosh, I love him so much. There's
Yeah,
place for everybody.
there's
That's
a
why
place.
love is just love. How when we think, how can God love me? There are so many people in the world, and how can, but just think about mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers. They love all of their kids, all of them, um, in a different way. Each one is different, different needs, but the love is just an amazing thing. It's God. It's just that's it. That's the what unites everything. What brings meaning to everything in life.
And so, there's a lot fewer people getting married now. And people are waiting to have children until much, much later, and sometimes they can't have kids.
Yeah,
And then they have to use artificial means to have children. And and I feel for these people because we're not taught to get married and have children young anymore. And so often women end up being close to 40 and realize ha- they haven't married and it's too late to have children. So this is something that I think the Catholic faith has done right in that they're pro-life, right? So they're pro-life. They don't believe in abortion, and also that this sacrament of marriage is something to humble ourselves to. And if you're not having birth control, if you're not having a birth control pill, then you're more likely to have children. And our society, we've been those birth control pills. I took them when I was young. They made me very depressed. I took them on and off, and I would find that I would take care of myself well, and then I would go on the pill and I wouldn't take care of myself. It was brutally. It made brutal changes to my
to your natural,
emotions. Oh
yeah,
yeah, it was terrible.
your nature. Yeah,
And that's not
yeah.
unusual, I don't think.
No, um, this is one of the things that I always I'm on the board of a school, a girls' school, and that's one of the things that I always think it's important that I think in a way we don't tell the whole truth to our girls when they are young. I'm included in that. I was not told the whole truth. I was told that I could be like a man. I could do exactly everything like a man. I think now in schools, in even in elementary, middle school, high school, we raise girls with the idea that they're going to have lives where they're going to be like men. I mean, have careers, full time jobs like working long hours, um, work jobs that you have to put your whole being into it. That there's your life is not going to have room for anything else. And I think that's a mistake because then some women don't realize of that until, like you said, until they're 40, etc. And then they have trouble having kids. They're trouble having finding a husband.
Mm-hmm.
And others realize maybe earlier, and then they realize, well, I have to sacrifice, and I have to if I want to have kids. But nobody told me that. I think we should tell our girls, look, a very important part of being a woman is being a wife and a mother. They don't tell girls that in school. It's
Mm-mm.
like they don't tell boys in school that an important part of their life is going to be a husband and a father. Okay, this is not just. But I think that by the way, women have always worked. This is not a new thing. My grandmother worked in the fields in the south of France, and her husband went to the war, World War I, and she had to take care of the farm and the kids and everything. So women have always worked, but but we need to understand that there's going to be a stage in your life. There's going to be certain years in your life that you're going to have children and you have to raise these kids. That's the most important thing that you're going to do in your life is to raise human beings. What can be more important than to do that? What to I don't know. I cannot think of any job that could be
No.
more important. Well,
Mm-mm.
maybe save the life if you're a doctor. I don't know, but it's a very specific cases. And so there is that point in and every woman is different, right? But there is that unhappiness I see in a lot of young women because they realize, wait a second, what have I believed all these years? This is not true. We need to, and then by the time they are so involved in their whole career and their whole idea of what they want to do that they forgot that important part of who they are. And you cannot be happy in life if you don't do what you were made to do, what you were made to do in this life. And women, part of our being a woman is being a mother. That doesn't mean you have to have biological kids. That's the only way you can be a mother. We are mothers in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I have conversations with younger women, with men all the time, and I see myself as a mother. I'm always that kind of relationship with younger people. That's because that's my natural way to relate with other people because I am a woman. Because men relate differently. So nobody's telling that to girls, especially in public school. They tell them all these lies, all these, well, outrageous things, but nobody really has the common sense to say, hey, you're a woman and you, you're going to be a mother one day and that's going to be awesome. That's going to be the best thing you're going to do. Nobody's telling them that.
No.
And so nobody's looking forward to that. It's kind of like if you're pregnant, it's a burden. Oh
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. Um, and then when they get married, if they find somebody, and I think that's what we talked about when you and I met in the summer, is that thing of, well, it has to be 50-50. You have to do 10 hours with the kid. I do 10 hours. And it's like, what kind of a relationship is that? Um, and, and, and they're so unhappy. And by the way, I remember when I raised my kids when they were little, we lived in Washington, D.C., and I stayed home with I quit my work my job. I was teaching at the time, and I stayed home with when the kids were young. And I remember I would go to these parties in Washington D.C. Everybody was like, these parties that everybody's looking over your shoulder, see who came in the room more important than you. And so what do you do? And I would feel bad because I was not a powerful, famous lawyer or politician or whatever. And I could tell that they also felt bad because they could not stay home with their kids. So we were all feeling bad no matter
Right.
what. Because, and I think that the problem is we need to, part of the formation of a person is to talk about these things, of the things that are going to happen in your life. Your life is not just your career. Your life is way more than that. I mean, this is a very complex problem. I'm not trying to solve it, but I think what I try to do with my own daughter is to just talk about this. Nothing is going to fulfill you as much as raising your children, as having your own kids. That doesn't mean that you cannot have a job, interesting job. That means that part you're going to have to spend time with those kids, and you're going to have, and that's going to fulfill you because you were made for that. If nobody tells them that, they're going to find out the hard way. They're going to live half of their lives really confused and unhappy. Not only unhappy, depressed, and end up like not married because by the time they realize they cannot find somebody that is good enough because you're so accomplished, you're so good that no. So, because another thing about the couple, it's so important to grow together. It's so important to get married early so that you can be poor together, you can grow up together, you can make money together, or stay poor together, or begin doing things together. That's so important for the couple. It's much better than just start when you have your life completely done and your habits, all your life done, and then you don't want to be flexible with somebody else, and that's like you start with problems there. So I mean, I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but there's a big majority, I think, of young women that are suffering because of that lying that we have done. We haven't been really telling them the truth about their lives and what was going to happen. And by the way,
Yeah.
that affects men too, because men is the same thing, because if it affects one gender, it affects the other one too.
Yeah, I think men, why would a man go out and do difficult, dangerous work if he didn't have a motivation? And the motivation a man has is to have a wife and a baby at home.
Right.
And then they have the motivation to go and work long hours and to do difficult things.
Yeah.
And, and women also, our idea of women have been, this question that people keep asking, what is a woman this year? That seemed to be one of
Right.
the most important questions of the year. But if you look deeply into our history, it's into our biblical history, it's Mother Mary, and she's there with the baby. And so a woman, I think a girl has no baby, a woman has a baby.
Yeah.
Because it really
Yep.
does make you grow up too.
Totally.
And
And
woman
make
means
you,
grown
yeah,
up.
grown up, and fulfills you. That caring qualities of the woman. One of the most fulfilling experiences for me has been taking care of my mother when she was very sick. That's another way of mothering. She was in a bed. She broke her legs. She couldn't walk. She was like very skinny, bed sores everywhere. And I would go and she was in Spain, and I was so fortunate to be able to go often and just spend the whole week with her, sleeping next to her, feeding her, doing everything. And that's one of the most fulfilling experiences for me, because I was able to give myself, to care, to use all my qualities for another person. That was so amazing. Same thing with my kids. And I understand that was easy, because I would go for a week and then I would go back home and I would not do it, right? Okay, I see, I agree about that. But those moments, they were so full of love and grace and so special. And my mother was so at peace, and
Mm-hmm.
so generous also to let me do all of that for her, because sometimes we don't want people to do, but she was open enough to do that. So that those are the things that fulfill the person, the woman, I think. When my father was alive, he took care of my mother too, but it was different. Like the relationship of a mother and a daughter, it has all its special things, right? So is that's the a quality that is characteristically feminine, and we need to use that. That's part of who God made us to be. And if we don't use it, if we just try to do like just what men do, and we don't use those things, we're not going to be happy, we're not going to be fulfilled. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying these things, but I'm 61, and I realized that that's the truth. And I fought this truth for decades. But I get to my age and I said, what is really important? What is really important? My mother had to work because my father left when I was 6 years old. She had to go to work, but she was always there when I needed her, and I was we were top priority for her, and I knew that, and I noticed that, and and so she picked me up and she fed me, and I'm thinking, why would anybody not want to do that, right? Just to fulfill a dream of a career. For me, that is not going to make you happy.
I wonder what women are thinking, because we're thinking, I think, that we have to be perfect at it. And there's no perfection in a mother. You don't know what you're doing, first of all, when you
No.
first have a baby. But every woman has always been like that.
Yeah.
That's always been the way it is. You get this little baby and you think, what am I going to do with this little baby? But you just love that little baby, and you know what to do. You pay attention and you know what to
Yes.
do, right?
And you want to be
Yeah.
there. You
And
want
you
to be
want to
there.
be there.
And
Yeah.
it's very hard, because a lot of times it's so boring. They don't
Right.
talk. They don't like, right? If you're used to having an interesting job and then you stay home with the kids, like, oh, this is so boring and there's nothing. But at the same time, it's so fulfilling. It's so sacrificial, and it's so beautiful and full of love and satisfying. So yeah, I think I think that I think we need to teach girls that they need to be aware that that's a very important part of what their life. And there's going to be years in their lives where this is going to happen. And I mean, if, I hope, right, for
Mm-hmm.
them. And when that happens, are you ready for it, or you're going to be in shock?
Yeah. Are you ready and willing? Right? Ready and
Yeah.
willing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, babies are only babies for a very short time.
Yeah.
So, soon they're crawling around and sitting up, and they're interested in the world. And then you get a little bit more time on your own. So
Right.
it's only about something like, what, 8 months or something, that a baby is
Yeah.
very, very small. Although
Well,
you
yeah.
should pay quite a bit of time with them. It's healthier for them to be with their mother for longer.
Yes.
But as long as they have someone, the same person all the time. So
Yes.
say you have your grandmother, say the grandmother is there, or an aunt is there, or siblings are
Yeah.
there. I mean, I think I grew up with my sister and brother. They were 7 and 8 years older than me, and I remember them raising me. I
Right.
really don't remember my parents much when I was
Hmm.
little. They were off doing things by then, but my
Right. Yeah.
siblings took care of me. So that's the other thing is you don't know that, but when you first have a baby, you think maybe this is going to be overwhelming and there's no way that you're going to cope. But the thing is, you will find community. People are interested in babies.
Right.
So then you
Yep.
have people that are interested and they come around. And I remember that, it was, there were no cell phones or anything when I was a mother. So I was on my own quite a bit. But I have been reading about cell phones recently too, and this idea of um, what's it called? There's an experiment done where the mother would interact with the baby. The baby's in the high chair. They're interacting. The baby's pointing and the mom's looking. And the baby's cooing and the mother's cooing back. And so there's an interaction happening. And then the mom turns around. And when she turns around again, it's called still face. The still face experiments where the mom doesn't say anything. And the baby looks at the mom and she points and the mom doesn't do anything. And she smiles and giggles like she did, and the mom doesn't do anything. And she starts to kind of squirm. The little baby starts to squirm and then starts to get very uncomfortable. And it's the same thing that happens when a mother looks at a telephone, looks at her
Right.
cell phone. Because as
Hmm.
soon as you look at your phone, your face goes blank because you're reading. You're
Hmm.
reading or you're watching something, and all of your attention goes there. And if the baby is looking at you and trying to interact, that's why you see these videos of babies throwing cell phones in the swimming pool if their father's on the cell phone, or you know or
Yeah.
babies being interested in these phones, because if a mother isn't interested in the baby but
Right.
is interested in a phone, then a phone must be really something.
Yes.
Right.
Well, but not only babies. If I'm talking to somebody and the person is looking at her phone, I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. Are
Right.
you listening to me? Oh yeah, I'm listening. No, no, you're looking at the phone. We need that eye to eye connection. Babies, human beings, we need that. We need to connect with other people and
Yeah.
looking at the eye. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We do
totally.
think that we do think that we can change our natural setting for something that is high tech and that there won't be any consequences. But just
Right.
look what happened with the birth control pill. I mean, uh, it was a revolution to
Yeah.
give women the birth control. It meant that women being married to men that are on the birth control pill, they don't have to be pregnant. So is this the same as a gay couple? I mean, is it
Yeah.
any different? Like these questions have to be asked.
Yeah.
If you're
It
going to,
is.
it
Yeah. It
changes
is
everything.
the beginning of wanting to be like a man. When you
Yeah.
take the pill, you are like a man. You are, you have nothing happen, no responsibilities, no nothing. But the
No
difference is
limitations.
no limitations. The difference is we can act like men, but we are not men. And there are consequences if we act like men. And we are, by nature, we are receptive human beings, receptive creatures. When we have sex, it's like we're opening ourselves completely. This is very different than a man. And so if we act like men, but we have this dichotomy, this is not, it's not, that's not how it works. This is gonna, I'm not a psychologist, but this is going to do bad things to you, to your brain, to your emotions, to the way that you live your life. And I think that the pill allowed women to behave like men and believe that they can do that with no consequences. So yeah, I totally agree.
Something
And
that
I
my
am
husband told me is that he's read, and I don't know where he read this, but as a man who has a sexual relationship with a woman where they are strangers, they don't know each other very well, the feeling that a woman has after that is what is it's not, you don't feel a warm fuzzy feeling,
right.
right? You feel a kind of, maybe a sense of relief that it's over is what you feel. I don't know. But a man's feeling is one of disgust when he makes love with a woman where there's no commitment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if women realize that, if they
Right.
are having these relationships that aren't deep, and that it isn't a committed relationship, that
Yeah.
it's just a one-off
Right.
escapade, that man, when he makes love with you, will feel disgust for you when the
Right.
sexual act is over.
Yeah.
That's
And
something to really pay attention to.
yeah, yeah, and it makes sense because we want communion. We don't want just the act. We want communion. Human beings want communion with each other, relationships, and this is like just something so private that we don't, we shouldn't be doing that like that as a commodity. It should be, it's something that it's attached to the person, to the spirit of the person. So yeah, totally, I totally understand that. It makes sense. So yeah, so I think that all these things should be told early on, because they're hearing a lot of bad things early on, that they shouldn't be hearing, that are not the truth. And why are we afraid to talk about these things with our girls? Why? I don't understand why. Maybe not to offend, maybe because people can say, well, no, but you think women are dumb and they are not supposed to do like no, 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 it's nothing to do with that. It has to do with what the anatomy of the woman, and the heart of the woman is a certain thing, and you cannot change that. So
No, no, that's right. You cannot change that.
yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
matter how sophisticated you are. It's still a basic human
yeah,
need
yeah.
to be a mother.
We women want to be loved, right?
Yes.
We want to be loved. We don't want to be used. We don't want to have pleasure. I mean, we do, but the most important thing is we want to be loved. We want to be in connecting deeply with somebody.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, like saving yourself for your husband,
Yeah.
which has been the teachings of the church. There's something to that. There is definitely something to that, that
Yeah.
our society has decided that that's not important. But
Right.
we
It
have to
is
think
totally.
again. We've tried that, and look at where it's got us now. People aren't being married. They're not having children. Now people are deciding, that they can change from a man to a woman.
Right.
We've gone so far away from what is natural.
Yeah.
We've got to revisit this and
Yeah.
find out. So what would your advice be to build and maintain trust in God during difficult times?
Wow, that's a deep
That's a
question.
totally, yeah. Well, when I was very sick, right? I had cancer, and God came to me when I was desperate, and that really did sustain me. I had a good family. They did gather around me, so I had the 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 care of people around me who loved me, and that was very, very helpful. But I had many, many nights in the hospital where I was alone, and I wasn't alone because I would pray, and it really did sustain me. So I don't know if you what you would think about difficult times, because now I know what difficult times are, at least in my own experience. And
Yeah.
it was nothing that I had no idea how helpful it would be to have a personal relationship with God.
Um, so our faith tells us to trust. And it's very, you say that very easily, but it's very hard to do because we always want to control or think that we are in control of things. But that's what our faith tells us to trust. And so I do my routine every day is I go to mass at 6:30 in the morning. Then I do an hour of prayer, and then I start work, and then have lunch, and then the afternoon is usually I do grandkids stuff if I can, or if I have to run errands, go dinner, whatever, whatever. By the time I get it's nighttime, I've been very distracted from that, from the morning when I was in prayer and working and everything. And I noticed that whenever I pull away and distract myself with the things of the world, even though they are good things, they're not bad things, I get I get worried and fearful and anxious. And then night comes and I'm like afraid, and I start thinking about all the things that worry me, all the things that could go wrong. In other words, I stop trusting in God. I just start being on my own, kind of like. And if we are on our own, especially if you're sick, or you are in a bad situation, if you are on your own, you're kind of like panicking because you see you have no control. So sometimes we need to get to that point to realize, no, wait a second. And that's why I think in those moments that of tragedy, or that something hard happens to us, some deep suffering, is when we really touch bottom and we say, wait a second, do I believe or not? And that is kind of the process that I go through every day. At the end of the day, I'm on a secular mode. I'm, I mean, secular, like, um, by that, I mean, I'm on my own. God was with me in the morning, but now I left him there and I just did my own stuff. And so my advice is, well, the solution that I found is prayer. Again, you
Mhm.
cannot go without prayer if you want to be close to God, if you want to trust in God. You cannot just say, yeah, I trust in God, and live your life like nothing has changed. I think in order to trust in God, you need to have a relationship with God. And that means prayer. That means throughout the day, remembering, hey, Lord, I'm here. I'm not going away. Please keep me close. Don't let me go far away, because when I go far away, I get fearful, anxious, worried about things, because there's so many things that we can worry about. And so my answer to your question is prayer. That's the only way we can trust and stay trusting. And of course, reading scripture is I think the best way, in my opinion, to be close to God and to trust in God always with the word of God. And so yeah, so then the days that my day that I don't have time to pray at night or whatever, are the days that I'm more anxious, more um, worried, fearful. I make the mistake sometimes of reading the news before at night. Everything in the news is bad. They don't say good things. There are a lot of good things happening in the world, but you don't hear those things. And so, okay, so you're worrying. about whatever. You're reading the news about your illness, about whatever. Okay, so we have two choices: worry about it or talk to God. And so many times I forgot to talk to God and I choose to worry. And okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this? Wait a second, spend some time. And that's how I develop my trust in God, because many times I lose it. I because if you don't practice, you lose it. It's like is that relationship. So I don't remember what the question was, but how do you develop the trust? Is that what you were asking? How do you grow in trust
In difficult
in
times.
God in difficult
Yeah.
times? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think difficult times are the easiest times,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
everything else fails.
Right.
Right? I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's true. I think that's true. I think that, well, for me, I had plenty of opportunities to form a personal relationship with God, but I was always had a very strong self will. And it wasn't until really that everything was taken from me that I reached out. Yeah.
Because sometimes we need God to take everything from us
Yeah.
to realize.
And we're lucky if we survive when that
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
And also the perspective. This is temporary. Everything that we're living is temporary. And we are so attached to it because a lot of it is very good, but it's temporary. Do we really believe this? I mean, we say that we believe that, right? We say the creed, we our faith tells us that, but do we live our lives believing that, in a way that it's clear we're believing that? When you it's a very hard thing to do.
It
Very
is
hard thing to do.
being unattached to everything. Yeah. Very,
Yeah.
very hard to do.
It's like that verse, I believe, help my unbelief. So I want to believe, but that there's a big part of me that doesn't. And that's where I go away and I try to solve everything by myself. And but no, I want to believe. Help me, Lord. So I
Yeah.
think prayer is so
Yeah.
important. And the more the less I pray, the more, the farther from God, and the more anxious and freaked out about everything I am.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful when you can bring that suffering and you can unite it to the suffering of Christ, and to make it meaningful too. Because we suffer, like suffering is just an opportunity to let God work in us, to 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 love in a sacrificial way, to submit. That's another thing we were talking about, to submit to the will of God, which is the submission par excellence. That's the submission of Mary, right? That's the submission of Jesus. His whole life was submission to the will of God. So if suffering comes our way, I think is God giving us that opportunity. San Jose Maria Escrivá had a sentence, a beautiful sentence, and I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't remember exactly. He says, the crosses are, when you have an unexpected cross, accept it, because that is God looking for you, or God searching for you, or something like that. And that's very easy to say, but in that moment, to know and to believe that that's the truth. When you're sick, when you're desperate, that's when God is searching for you. And if you don't look for God in that moment, your suffering is going to be so much worse, because you're going to have to do it alone, and you're not going to have the union with the suffer the passion of Christ, of that sacrificial love. So I think that it is true that sometimes God throws or allows something bad to happen to us so that we get closer to Him.
Yeah, I
because
think so
otherwise we
too.
would just, yeah, we would
That's
just.
a tough conversation because lots of people think. I remember when my aunt died, she had lung cancer from asbestos poisoning because people used to use asbestos, and she had washed her husband's construction clothes and probably shook his pants when he came home from work and breathed in the asbestos, and so
Oh
she
wow.
ended up. She died. Her husband died, and my uncle died because he was a young man living with them when my uncle worked in construction. So my family is particularly sensitive to asbestos. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's like that for everyone, but it's definitely like that for our family. And I remember I went to see my aunt. Uh, I had just had one baby, so I was just married, and she'd been my godmother, so she was very important to me. And I went to see her. Makes me cry. That's interesting. It's a long time ago now because my kids are in their 30s. Uh, I said that I wanted to be together, and she said, "We will be." And I thought, oh, yeah, how can that be? How can that be? And it was only, she died, and I think it was the next winter I was skiing. I was in Montreal, and there's a mountain in Montreal, and I was cross country skiing by myself up there. And I could feel someone skiing behind me, and I turned around, and there was no one there. But I thought that was my Aunt Grace for sure, because she liked to ski in the woods, and she had come skiing with me. And I knew that. I could feel it. And I believe it too. I believe that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Even my grandmother, she used to cook with her hands. She never used like kitchen implements. She would clean the pots with her hands, and she'd make cookies with her hands. And whenever I made cookies with my hands, I'd think I was with my grandmother.
Mm.
And now I
Yeah.
have gardening. That's with my mother. So if I garden and dig in the dirt, then I'm with my mother. And so, we have the opportunity, I think, to have these families. We have to have children and to become grandmothers.
Yeah.
And as we lose these people, I lost my father in December, not
Oh, so
long
not
ago.
too long ago.
No, but it's not that makes me cry. I just went to visit my sister, and she has dementia, and she's in
Mm.
the last weeks of life. So that's why my heart is hurting.
Does she have faith?
Yes, she does. Yeah, my other sister took care of her. She had my older sister live with her in her home until she couldn't manage her anymore, and she's just been in a nursing home for a little while. But my sister asked her if she was peaceful, and said, yeah, she's completely peaceful, and she's taken care of. And if I talk to her about those things, because she has a type of cancer or a dementia that's frontal temporal,
Uh-huh.
they don't forget you. Like my
Okay.
mom and my sister both had that kind of dementia. They know you until the end.
Okay.
They don't lose their understanding. They just they can't their functions, their executive functions
Okay.
start to fail, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they lose their ability to interact with the world. And so you have to get very close and be very attentive in order to relate.
Okay.
But my sister, yeah, she has faith. Thank goodness. And I think that faith came to her later in life, because I would say she had a strong self will just like me.
I
So I
know
think
sometimes, yeah, that can get in the way of,
yes,
right?
I think
Yeah.
often, maybe always, it gets in the way.
Yeah. So you said you have to get really close so that
Yeah,
she knows you.
yeah,
So what a gift that is.
it
Because
is.
that's another thing. We never get close to other people, right?
Right,
That's
right.
what I felt with my mother. I had to get so close,
Mm-hmm,
and to the point that I could smell her skin.
mm-hmm.
And it was so it was so comforting to be able to, you know, those smells that maybe your sister's smell reminds you of when you were a child and your moments together or something. It just that doesn't happen unless you're put you're forced to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I say
Mm-hmm.
that because my mother, she suffered a lot. My father left her alone with three kids. She didn't have a profession. She had to go to work and find a job, and she had to do a lot of things. And um, but then years later, when she was older, my father came back,
Oh, wow.
and everybody was telling her, don't take him back because he's blah blah blah. But she did took him back, and the last years of her life, my father was the one that took care of her.
Oh, wow.
But he took care of her with such love. With And you know, my father was one of those typical Spanish macho men, like super handsome and the whole thing. And then he had never cooked, he had never cleaned, he had never done anything. And at 88 that he started cooking, he started cleaning, he gave her baths, and he took care of the sores and everything, massages. I was amazed to see that happening. And I was thinking, well, in order to happen that, my mother had to break her legs and be incapacitated. So that tragedy that happened in her life also allowed the love of my father to pour into her being 24 hours a day for years. And she recognized that was the beauty. She said, this is a blessing, because
Mm.
everybody would come visit her. I'm so sorry. You are in bed. You cannot do anything. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't go to the bathroom alone. Everything. But she said, no, this is a blessing. Everybody's coming and taking care of me and showing me so much love, and especially my husband. He learned how to cook. He made lentils and flan, and I mean, it was so. What I'm saying is, in those moments of tragedy, of pain, there's all these opportunities to show love, and and love is the most important thing. That's what we are made to love, to love God
Mm-hmm.
and to love others. That's the commandment: love God, love others. That's what we're made to do. And sometimes we don't love unless we're put in this kind of a situation. And so you need to. And I remember my mom used to love when I scratched her back. So in at night, I would take off her clothes and I would put on the nightgown. And when I did that, her skin was so dry. She was in her bones, like only bones. And
Mm-hmm.
I would put just some lotion, and then I would scratch. And she would go, oh, because nobody touches old people.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody touches sick people.
I
And
know.
we need to be touched. And so anyway, I'm going on and on about the same thing,
No, it's
but
true
yeah,
though. It's true. Yeah. No, I feel that when I go see my sister, I hold her hand, and she wants to hold hands. She won't let go. But the way that
see,
I got close to her the first time, because I hadn't really connected with her very, very well, but she was in this little chair, in her little wheelchair, and she doesn't weigh very much, so she's very tiny. And I would hold her hands and sit right in front of her, and then I'd bring my head close to her and we'd bump heads. And I was bumping heads with her, and I thought, this is pretty good. I'm relate. But then I actually looked at her, and she was looking at me and when I looked and she saw me, her eyes were really big. It's like we connected, and I
yeah,
thought, oh my goodness, you're there, like you are there, and now
yeah,
I know you're there, and I know you're there. It was a
yeah.
really wonderful experience, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
It's such a
It was the
precious
best.
time.
It was the
Yeah,
best, you know? It
yeah,
was the
yeah,
best. And even now, she can't even move, but I can still bump my head against her
yes.
and I can see that she enjoys it, you know?
And she probably needs it even more.
And she needs it. Absolutely, she needs
Yeah,
it. Yeah. But my
yeah.
sister, who comes and takes care of her, she's so good. She's so good. And she took care of my dad. She moved. She moved from the mainland to the island to within walking distance of my dad as he got older, knowing that he would need care. Yeah,
How
she's
beautiful
really
is that?
yeah, how
Yeah,
beautiful is that's for sure. So I told her when I came that I actually came there for her because she needs the support because she's
right,
so much support for everyone else.
right. Yeah,
But we have
totally.
to. That's what we want to be is of service, right?
That's it. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah,
And
it's so fulfilling. It makes you feel so much better.
exactly, exactly. Because
Yeah.
that's what we're supposed to do. Yeah,
Yeah. And
totally.
that's why having a baby is like that. I remember when I first had my baby, my first baby, and we went home to visit Jordan's family, and they didn't have any kids in the family yet. He was the eldest. So this was the first grandchild. And we got there, and everyone was looking at the baby.
Yeah,
Everyone. And I thought, isn't this nice?
yeah,
Isn't this nice? It has nothing to do with me, this situation. It has to do with my daughter.
yeah,
And that's such a relief. And I think people don't realize, young women, again, don't realize you have a baby and you provide the world with a human being. And
yeah,
you just, and you know, you just walk down the street with the little baby in a carriage and everyone of every kind smiles at you and stops and says
yeah,
something sweet to the baby. It turns people into different, you'll see a whole different side of humanity
yeah,
when you have children.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody will look at the baby and smile. It's just something. No matter what your life is, it's just that touches everybody's heart.
It
Yeah,
does. It touches everybody. And so thinking that that's not necessary is it's such a
it's,
terrible loss.
it's incorrect. Yeah,
It's
it's
incorrect.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I'll ask you one more question.
Well, this is a very. I'm enjoying a lot. It's not too much time. It's great.
Okay, okay. Um, peace. Let's talk about peace. How do you tie together concepts of peace and faith in the daily living and in your talks? Peace and faith.
Peace is also a result of aligning your will to the will of God. I think that's when you find peace. The peace that surpasses all understanding, the peace of God that St. Paul talked about. Um, it's not the peace of the world, it's the peace that goes together with goodness, with love, and with the will of God. I have a story that I always tell that story, but I think it's very, um, I think it explains well what I'm trying to say. Years ago, when the kids were little, we had this friend who was very, very wealthy, and he was a great guy. And he said, "Do you want? If you want, I'll invite you to go on my boat to the coast of Croatia for a week." And we said, "Wow, that's really nice." Yes, yes, go. You go there for a week. Don't worry about it, and you'll go along the coast. And so the kids were little, and they were all excited. So we spent 6 or 7 days in the beautiful yacht, and so we ended up in the coast of Croatia, in the city of Split. And so, and right before the we arrived in Split, one of my sons started feeling a little bit bad, stomach ache, and and throw up. And so, we said, okay, we were having such a good time. We said, you're fine, you're fine. Don't complain anymore. Just stay in your room, watch a video, whatever. We're having a great time here. But anyway, like the day after, he was not getting better. And so there's a lot of details, but I just want to focus on one part. It turned out that he had appendicitis,
Ah.
but we went a couple of days telling him he was fine. The great parenting. It was the parents of the year.
Mhm.
But anyway, we ended up, long story short, we ended up in a hospital in Bosnia,
Ah.
because we were in Medjugorje, which is a town in Bosnia, and they told us, you have to go to the hospital right now because this kid has having appendicitis. So we get to the hospital in Bosnia, and it was a Sunday afternoon. There was nobody there, just the person at the reception, no doctors, one nurse that and so we go there with the child in this excruciating pain, because at that time it was bad. And so we stay there for hours waiting for a doctor call, because it was Sunday, there was no doctor, they had to call somebody, and the doctor, blah, blah, blah. And so finally a doctor comes, they do the testing. The kid was in, like, I didn't even know what to do. They couldn't give him painkillers because they had to test him. So anyway, so it turns out, I said, this kid, we need to remove the appendix, because it looks like it has broken,
Right.
rupture, and that's really dangerous. Okay, so imagine we were in this hospital. It was like really scary place. Nothing, the lights broken. It was Bosnia still had all those signs of a war. Like the buildings had holes in the. It was like, just please, God, get me out of here. We need to go someplace else. But we were there, and they said, no, we can't do this. We cannot take you to another hospital. We need to do it right now. And so I saw it, and then we said, okay. So we ran out of things to do, and we had to let the control to God. Really, that was the moment that I said, okay, there's nothing I can do. And I remember that when they took him in a stretcher, and it was a long haul, and they took him away. My son was like 12, and I was watching him go, and in that moment I said, okay, Lord, I leave it all in your hands. I trust you. And I really, really meant it. That was not like, oh, I trust God. Yeah, no, I really meant it. Well, when I did that, I felt, I think that was the peace that St. Paul was talking about, that surpasses all understanding. Because I said, whatever happens, I will accept. And I really meant it. And not only I felt peace, I felt joy, which was weird, and I couldn't really tell anybody, because it was something like really intimate. I couldn't share that with my husband and my other kids. I was not faking it, but I was pretending I was very worried, but I was not, because I made from my heart. I decided, I trust you. I really trust you. And that was one of the times in my life when I felt real peace. Why? Because I completely submitted, completely surrendered to the will of God. I really meant it. Whatever your will is, I will accept it. And so that's how I see peace. Peace is goodness, love, and acceptance of the will of God. I think that's the real peace, I think. What do you
And
think?
your son was good the
Yeah,
next day. He
it
was
was
good.
it was rupture and gangrene.
Oh my goodness. Oh dear.
It was bad.
Scary. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was bad. But anyway, there was a contrast because we had been for a week in this yacht with the thing and the food, and now we were in this little hospital we were in the town of Mostar. And by the way, we had no money because the cash
Oh,
machine wouldn't give us money because
right.
we had reached the limit. So we had to ask money to feed the kids that night.
Wow.
And but it was beautiful. It
Oh.
was it we were in like there was so much grace.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was fighting about anything. Everybody getting along and everybody, relating to each other with love. I mean, it was so great. And then we spent there a week.
Oh.
We had to stay there for a week. We
Mm-hmm.
met people there that were so great. We didn't know what they were saying because nobody spoke English, but they were like really interested in us. We looked so weird. So it was. I'm telling you, we were a lot happier during that week that we spent, like waiting for my son to get better, than all the fancy things that we did the week before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the peace and the saying, "Oh, the Lord is so good. He saved my son." Like when we knew that, then to be grateful. That's another thing that gives you peace when you're grateful for what you have, because everything you have is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so Saint Ignatius of Loyola said that the root of all sin is ingratitude,
Mm-hmm.
because because it if when you are not grateful, your relationship with God is wrong, because everything you have he has given to you. So then the beginning of that relationship is to realize and accept that and acknowledge and be grateful. So I remember being very grateful, even though we were like not doing anything. We were just waiting in a hotel room, but the meeting, everything was really full of grace and love. And then how much the bill was for
No.
the surgery and blah blah blah. $1,000
Right.
only.
Oh,
And
yeah.
$1,000. Like, can you believe it? Here, like if you go to a hospital, you pay it out of pocket for an appendectomy.
Right.
At least, I don't know, like 30 times that.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
peace.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah,
that's a good story. That's a good story. Uh, it's the submission. It's the surrender. All of that. It's such a beautiful feeling to surrender.
it is.
You give up all your worry, all your control. So such a relief.
It frees you,
Yeah.
like it's freedom. It's a way to experience freedom. I
Yeah.
have
Real freedom.
real freedom is when you are not controlling, and that's and it's the goodness of it. I remember when my husband travels a lot for work, and I don't like to travel. And whenever I travel, I get really anxious, and I'm gonna lose the flight, and I just might start sweating, and it's like I don't like it. But when I travel with him, I'm like a little child, and he takes care of me. And so he tells me, "Okay, we're gonna go to the gate now," and I say, "Okay." I don't argue. It's probably the only way I don't argue with him about things, and I just say whatever he tells me. But I do that. So okay, now we're gonna go to the gate. Now we're gonna have coffee. Now we're gonna do this and that, and I don't worry. And if the flight is delayed or canceled, I don't worry because I know he's gonna take care of me, and I feel so free, and I free myself of anxiety and fear, and I'm like a little child. And I think that's how we should be in our relationship with God. So just let Him really guide our lives, and through prayer, trying to understand what that means, um, so that we can have that peace and that freedom that comes with choosing the good for the greater good always.
When you pray, when you pray, do you also spend some time in meditation, listening to God?
Yeah. So what I do, I mean, I've done different things. What I'm doing right now is something called the 19th annotation. Have you heard of what? Have you ever heard?
Mm-mm.
Saint Ignatius of Loyola has um, um, made a retreat called the spiritual exercises, which is a month long. It's a silent retreat. And he wrote down all the things that had to be prayed about and the texts and scripture and conversations with God, etc. So it's a very, very structured. And so but he then said that for people that were busy and they could not take a month away from the world, that then they could do the same thing, but by praying an hour every day.
Oh,
And then, and I'm doing that, and it's following that structure. And then and so it's very structured, and you do meditate. And the way St. Ignatius structures that is you read scripture, and then you imagine yourself there, and then you imagine yourself, you look at all the details in the scene, and then and then you place yourself in there, and what do you see, and what happens, and then you start that meditation like that a lot of the times. um that doesn't mean that I always do it like that. Sometimes my imagination goes too crazy, so I have to bring back, or that specific verse. It's not really speaking to me in that moment, so I move ahead or something. But the important thing is, if you leave your imagination and nothing else, it's just. Saint Teresa of Avila used to say, "Es la loca de la casa," the crazy of the house. That's your imagination, like your mind. It just goes crazy thinking about all these things. So she said, you always have to bring a text in prayer, and scripture is the best text. And so when you find yourself just going around, just, okay, read a text, read a passage. If that passage for some reason is not capturing your imagination and your attention, maybe go to the next one. Just pray for the grace that you can understand that verse. Why is that verse important for you in that moment? So that's how I pray, always with scripture, because if I don't have scripture, I just, like a lot of people, your brain just goes crazy and start thinking about shopping lists and clothes, and I don't know, and where do I have to drive later, and you name it. So I always pray with scripture. I
and
didn't
so
before.
what is this? What is this structure that you're? What's it called? The structure that you're practicing now?
It's the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius, but
Okay.
it's I do it like throughout 9 months or a year,
Okay.
and I do it 1 hour daily, and
Okay.
it's called the 19th annotation,
Ah, right.
because in the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius, the annotations at the bottom that explain things about the exercises, the annotation number 19th says, if anybody doesn't have the time to do this for a month in silence away from everything, they can do it in this way, blah, 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 blah. That's why it's called the 19th annotation.
I see. I see. I see.
So I do that with my spiritual director. Um, uh, and so we meet once a week, and he guides my prayer, and it's it has it brings me very close, a lot closer to God than I was before.
That's
Um,
lovely.
yeah, yeah. So prayer is good. In Catholic tradition, we have the Holy Hour. Just pray every day for an hour. Go in front of the Blessed Sacrament and sit there for an hour. So important. A lot of people do that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have the sacrament, and we can go to mass every day, no matter where you are in the country. You can go to
Mm-hmm.
mass and
Yeah.
receive the blessed sacrament. How precious is that? Why wouldn't you want to do that every day? So there are all these things in our faith that help us have a relationship with God, and,
Mm-hmm.
and grow in holiness. That's
Yes,
the goal.
it is. That's the goal. And to do that and be present for whatever comes up next, what's important, right? So that we can be aware of what is calling us.
Yeah. What the right perspective
Yeah.
on what's happening in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. And really, it's virtually impossible to do otherwise.
Right.
So it's a good practice, and it might even be necessary. It
You
might
pray
be
the rosary.
unnecessary. Yeah, I
You
do.
pray you pray the rosary. Do you pray the rosary every day?
Yes, every day. Yeah. And I have a church too that I can go to at 6:30 in the morning.
Okay. Oh,
I,
that's
I
good.
like that because there's
I
other
like
ones that
that.
are at 9 in the morning or something, but 6:30 there's not a lot of other things happening at 6:30, so
Yeah.
you can probably go to mass,
It's
right?
yeah. It's hard to wake up, especially in the winter. Like
Yeah.
now, it's dark when I wake up at 6, and but it's worth it. It's always worth it. I have a series of talks on the mysteries of the rosaries,
Oh
and
yes.
yeah, and
Mm.
I really enjoyed working on that. And I do, like, for example, I do the joyful mysteries during Advent in
Hmm.
parishes, and then during Lent I do the sorrowful mysteries.
Okay.
And yeah, and that was so good because I went deep into scripture. Because a lot of times we pray the rosary, we just repeat, but it's so good to know the scripture, because the rosary
Yes.
is just the story of Jesus uh,
Hmm.
on earth, right?
Hmm.
And so to be able to meditate on those passages while we pray, it is it makes it a lot better, more meaningful,
Hmm.
and yeah, because I used to pray the rosary like, okay, repeating beats and just thinking about, oh, it's this 3 4 whatever, and that was never a good practice, because I was always hoping that it would end soon. It was like, okay, check. And that's
Right.
not how I wanted to pray the rosary. I wanted to be a meaningful experience, and a meditation on the life of Christ. That's what
Hmm.
Mary does for us, brings us to Christ. I
Hmm.
remember one time my mother, she used to pray the rosary every night. And she said, I don't know, we were talking about that. She was not very, very faithful. I mean, like, not a practicing Catholic, like a good Spaniard, but she prayed the rosary at night. And she said, well, I do it as a penitence. And I was thinking, yeah, I see that too.
Hmm.
Why not? Why not? Right? So you can pray
Yeah.
the rosary in many ways. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to be pleasant,
Right.
but you're
Right.
doing it. You are there. You're present in that moment.
I'm interested in your series of talks on the rosary.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay.
I'd like to be able to have access to that. How would I get access to that?
Well, I don't have it recorded.
And you don't, eh?
I
Oh, that's too
don't.
bad.
Maybe next time I do them.
Oh yes, do
Yeah,
record them. Why not?
yeah.
When Jordan was when the woke mob came after him at the university, they wanted to find something about him that they could take him out. And
Use
but
against him. Yeah.
everything was recorded. He'd been recording his lectures since he was at
Okay.
Harvard when he was really just beginning as a professor. And so
Uh
there was
huh.
nothing that they could find. So it is really good to record these things.
Yeah.
You never
Yeah.
know what you'll need them for,
Yeah.
but that sounds like something would be very helpful.
Yeah. I'm very low tech, so unless, like, and so when I give these talks, it's usually like in parishes or places there's not very high tech either. So
Yeah.
I don't record them. But during Zoom, I recorded a lot of my talks and I
Mm-hmm.
have them on Zoom. But the actual was like the present ones, I on these misters I didn't do that. So, but yeah, I'll do it next time. I'll think about
Okay.
it.
That's good. That's good. I think that would
Yeah.
be really helpful to people to know that.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. It was
I
lovely to
didn't
talk with you.
I didn't ask you how are you feeling.
I'm feeling fine.
Good.
I'm feeling good. Yeah.
That's good.
I yeah, we're down in we're visiting my daughter in Arizona. So
Uh-huh. That's nice.
what can go wrong there?
I
Nothing.
know. Are there the little ones there?
There's
Is
little ones. Yeah, there's
okay.
little
Oh,
ones
nice.
here. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all good.
That's very good. Enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. Thanks
Okay.
again.
Thank you, Tammy.